Hey everyone! So welcome to the very first. It's actually FEDSA. I see it says Zapped on the banner up there. But welcome to the very first FEDSA event for the year. And just to kind of show you guys how early it still is in the year. Like my Christmas tree is still up, so I even haven't even taken that down. So kind of we're all fresh and right into it. All right. So this is something I've wanted to have someone come speak about for a while now, and we've actually approached a couple of people, and fortunately or unfortunately for him, we'll see. But Bullz is the one that bit, and I know he has also been pretty active on ZA Tech and so forth in terms of Webflow. And if I'm not mistaken, you also run the Webflow meetup, correct?
So I don't run the Webflow meetup. I know the people that run it, and I'll be sharing more about that as well in my talk.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. And as always, starting off the year as professional as ever, not even getting my facts straight. But yeah, I think we try and keep it kind of conversational and informal as well. So,
Awesome.
yeah, maybe with that, if this is the first time you're joining, so kind of this is part of Front-End Development South Africa, the monthly streams we do. As mentioned, I'll change the logo up there in a second. And yeah, we do these every month. So if you find this interesting, you can check us out on Meetup as well, or just subscribe to the YouTube channel and so forth. Also, before I hand over to Bullz, please, if there are any questions, please leave them in the text chat, and I'll just raise them and we can unpack them. It might be addressed to Bullz, might be addressed to me, or just generally, and then we can speak about them. So please, guys, if you have any questions as we go, please leave them in the text chat. And yeah, so basically with that out of the way, I am happy to hand over to you, Bullz.
Awesome.
I just also want to quickly mention there is a bit of a high-pitched noise in the background on your side. So not sure if you're aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not a big deal. I just thought I'd mention it if you weren't aware of it. But it comes and goes.
Okay, I think it's some wind noise here on the window. I stay in Gordonsville, so.
Well, geez, there you go. Yeah.
Let me know if it gets like really terrible. Then I'll have to make a plan or something. Yeah.
100%. Okay. Awesome. Cool. But yeah, let's get into it. So I'll also just, if you maybe want to just bring your slides up, then I'll also just share that, and then we can take it from there. Yes. Awesome. Cool. Tell us a bit about yourself and where Webflow fits in and what Webflow is.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Skulk. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really glad to be here. I'm excited to have this chat. Thank you to, I'm going to butcher his name now. Joshua. How do I pronounce it again?
Yeah. He goes by a couple. Yuasha, Jaws.
Oh, Jaws. All right. Shout out to Jaws.
Let's go with Jaws.
Shout out to Jaws. Appreciate being here. So just a bit about me. So my full name is Bulumko, but I go by Bullz. And I was just telling Skulk that even my wife calls me Bullz. So that's the end of that story. So I'm a Webflow developer. I'm a freelancer. I run my own freelance business. But prior to that, I was working for a very cool Webflow agency based in Australia called Flow Gurus, run by a guy called Caleb J. I had an amazing time there. It was really awesome. Caleb J now has since moved on to work for another amazing agency called Reloom, and he's heading up the product department that side. Prior to that, I was working for another amazing agency called 59er Digital that's based here in Cape Town in South Africa, run by a guy called Robert Smart, who's also the guy who runs Webflow South Africa, which is the meetup that we have for South African Webflow developers and designers. And I'll probably chat about that a bit later in my talk. And yeah, before coming into Webflow, I was in the WordPress space, just like killing bugs.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you super quickly?
No problem.
So yeah, that background noise is picking up quite a bit. So I don't know how easy it is to solve that problem. If it's not easy to solve, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, Is it something that, like, is it just as simple as closing a window, or is it more complex?
Let me try. Yeah, this wind is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, just give me just 1 second, yo.
Cool, 100%. So I will entertain the people while that man is fixing his stuff. Probably also worth noting some of the other stuff that we kind of do. So if this is the first time you've tuned into one of our events, so we also have something called JavaScript Breakpoint every month. I think we have one on the 25th of this month, where it's myself, Ben Yannick, Mike Murray, and Xandor, and then we kind of chat about just kind of what happened in JavaScript in that month. There's also, so let me also change the banner while we're at it. So this Zap banner that you see up here, FEDSA banner, there we go. Okay, so yeah, we're kind of like kind of Zap's kind of like our sister meetup thing. That's FEDSA is front-end development South Africa. Zap is product design South Africa. So we also run a couple of events there in terms of product design and so forth. And end of last year, we kind of ended off with a kind of a product design AMA, Ask Me Anything. So with myself and Justin and Jenna Fenter as well. And yeah, and we're going to do a second part to that. And I see that Bullz is back. And yes, did you fix it?
I hope so.
Well, I'm not hearing it, so let's see how it goes. well, we do what we have to. Such is the world of software. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Do you want to bring the slides up again, and then I will just
all right.
pop
Yeah,
it in.
definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's continue.
Cool. Let's continue. So yeah, I think I was talking about the fact that I come from WordPress. I was in that space for a while, and in terms of my education, I studied at CPUT. That's the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. I studied a very cool qualification called multimedia. I don't think it exists anymore, but that's where I got introduced to web technologies and stuff like that. And yeah, that's my brief intro. And I'm just gonna be chatting about Webflow. I'm really passionate about Webflow. I'm really passionate about no code, low code. And I'm hoping to inspire some of you who are thinking about going in this direction. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. All right. So before I talk about Webflow, I think it's important to talk about no code and low code first, right? I think it's important to maybe just go over what this movement is about, because the term is the no code movement. And the big question is it going to take over traditional development? And my answer to that is no. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later. But in essence, before we delve into Webflow, let's just understand what no code is about, because Webflow is part of this sort of like ecosystem, if I can call it that. Right. So no code and low code is a development approach. It's a way of building for the web that requires minimal programming or no programming, right? So as you can see here, I've got a little bit of a diagram or a spectrum. On the far left-hand side, I've got no code. And on the far right-hand side, I've got low code. I'll chat a bit about why I put Webflow in the middle. So essentially, tools that fall more towards the left-hand side of things, right, are tools that are easier to pick up, are easier to adopt, right? But also these tools have the most amount of limitations when it comes to customization and scalability, right? When we move over to the far right-hand side of this spectrum or diagram that I have here in the low-code side of things, the tools tend to become a little bit more harder to adopt. The learning curve is a bit steeper. But the great thing is that you have more room for customization. There's more scope there, and then there's also more scope for scalability, right? So coming to Webflow, I put Webflow in the middle. This is all based on my experience, right? My feeling, my experience being in this space for a couple of years now. I've put Webflow in the middle, and I've given it a term of no code, as in KNOWCODE, right? And that's because Webflow is predicated on HTML and CSS principles. But something that's very important to understand. As much as you don't need to code when you work with Webflow and when you're building with Webflow, right? And you can code, by the way. We'll probably talk about that a bit later. You need to understand how HTML and CSS works. You need to know a little bit about how HTML and CSS works. So that's something very important to understand. So Webflow is predicated on those principles, on HTML and CSS principles. And that's why I've put it in the middle, in between no code and low code. Awesome. So how does Webflow work, right? I'm going to pretend as if I'm speaking to a lot of people that haven't played around with it. I know Skulk has some experience with Webflow. In fact, Skulk has a lot of experience with a lot of tools. But in case you don't have any kind of experience, I just want to go over how it works. So the screen that you're looking at, this little screenshot here, is basically what I look at on a daily basis as a Webflow freelancer. What we have in the middle here is a preview of what you are building is going to look like on most web browsers, right? And this preview section is what we call the canvas, right? That's where everything happens. That's where you see what you're building and what you're updating in terms of styles. All right. On the left-hand side, this is where you drop in all your elements, your H1 tags, your buttons, your images. That's where you drop things in. All right. And as you drop things in onto the canvas, you are then able to see the structure of those elements, right? And that structure is supposed to represent how things would look like, sort of like in an HTML document, right? So as you can see there, we've got a body tag all the way at the top. And then we've got a section div, we've got a container. So this is following sort of like that, those HTML principles, right? And then on the far right-hand side, we've got what we call our style panel. And this is where you make updates. This is where you add padding. This is where you add margins. This is where you update font sizes and stuff. So everything related to styling elements, adding spacing, putting things in a 2-column grid, stuff like that. So that's controlled by the style panel. So that's just a brief overview. I don't want to get into the weeds a bit too much. That's how Webflow works. And by the way, again, one of the reasons why Webflow shines and why I think Webflow is special, because there are a lot of sort of like Webflow builders, not Webflow builders, but website builders. One of them being Framer. I remember Skulk also mentioned Framer. Framer is a great tool. A lot of designers really enjoy it. But I think the main difference between a tool like Framer and Webflow is that Webflow really is trying to adhere to HTML and CSS principles. So it plays within that. Within those confines, if I can put it that way. So that's why Webflow really shines. And in essence, Webflow really is a visual development tool. It's not a drag and drop tool. It's not Wix. Sometimes people say, I remember one time I was working at a co-working space and someone just saw my screen and asked me what I did. And I was like, I'm a Webflow developer. And then they were like, what's that? I'm like, yeah, I use this platform to build websites. And then he was like, oh, like Wix. I'm like, no, not like Wix. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. Or like Squarespace or yeah,
no.
yeah. So
yeah.
Just FYI as well, like, so you have that little notification at the bottom that says StreamYard is sharing. So maybe just click the hide
Okay,
as
cool.
well. Yes.
Got it.
So yeah. So I also so I have a ton of questions myself. I also want to open up some space for others that are joining to ask some questions in the text chat. So, but I'll leave that up to you whenever you feel, hey, this is maybe a good place to kind of stop and maybe chat a bit and so forth. So so I just mentioning that I'm leaving that up to you. So it's not so if I'm just sitting here listening, it's not that I don't have any questions. I just want to put, but I obviously don't want to break your flow too much. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe what I'll do is maybe on each slide I'll just leave room for questions. I'll probably just check in with you. That's okay.
Cool. 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Just FYI, how many slides are we looking at? Also, just that I kind of pace it.
I think I've got about I want to say like it's not more than 15.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, I was scared. Now it's going to be like 200 or something. All right. Okay. No. Let's go. So yeah, like just let me know when you're ready, and I can pop some questions.
Okay, cool. But we can start now. If you have any questions, we can have a chat now. I don't
Yeah,
mind.
sure. Yeah. So, okay. So, like, I think it's really so. Yeah, you brought up a couple of things we spoke about beforehand, just before the
Yeah,
call started, the one being, like kind of one thing that I appreciate about Webflow. So caveat, I don't use Webflow myself. And
yeah,
it's purely just because the type of stuff that I do.
yeah.
So I tend to work on a lot of like software as a service, do a lot more like what you would traditional like consider traditional like software engineering and product design and stuff. But in a lot of those cases, like there's a design department or design team that uses Webflow. So I'm very familiar with Webflow, and I've also taught Webflow at some tertiary institutions and stuff where I've taught
Wonderful.
design because like it's a and one of the reasons being, as you mentioned, that what I really like about it is it works with the HTML model.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of things to be said about the HTML model,
yeah,
and like the DOM and all of that.
yeah.
If you know anything about me, I think that like there's a lot of problematic things about it because it was originally created for a different purpose than we're using it today. So the
Uh-huh.
web was originally created to share academic documents,
Yes.
and not like effectively what we're building today. So, but
Uh-huh.
that being said, that is the model that we have. And,
Yes.
and and so I can understand that some tools, like as you mentioned, like Wix, Squarespace, and even like Framer. Framer is a lot closer to Webflow, but Framer
Mm-hmm.
does abstract that away a bit from you,
Yes.
so that it's easier to understand for a designer or someone who's not
Yes.
familiar with HTML, because a lot of the stuff doesn't make sense. But I do feel the fact that Webflow kind of uses that mental model is its strength.
Yes.
And I guess it also speaks to the popularity of Webflow as well. And yeah, so what I'm curious about is, I don't know
Yeah.
how much you dabble with like actual raw HTML and CSS and all of that yourself,
Uh-huh.
but
Uh-huh.
what is your general take in terms of, let's say you want to learn HTML and CSS, starting with something like Webflow as a stepping stone to that. So getting an idea for what are the things you can do and the names of things and the properties before you literally start with a text file and you start writing code.
That is very, I've never thought about it that way.
Mm,
I was actually going to share later on my talk that if you're trying to get into Webflow,
mm,
I would suggest that you learn HTML and CSS first, and
mm,
that's just based on my experience because that's how I got into Webflow.
mm.
But I've never thought about going backwards, using Webflow
Yeah.
to understand how that's. I think that could work, to be honest with you, because
Is it?
you would get to see. Ah, that's very interesting. You would get to see what you're doing because obviously it's a visual development tool. You get to see things being built in real time. So I guess if you're trying to understand HTML, I think that could work. And to be honest, I haven't thought about it that way. That's a very interesting
And
question.
and I think also when you say like HTML and CSS and learning HTML and CSS, I assume you're talking about the principles and the model, and not
Yes,
necessarily going and sitting down and
yes,
remembering every single property, every
yes,
single hex code, all of those things. Yeah, understanding just generally how it works. Um,
yes. Understanding the box model, understanding
exactly. Mm,
CSS positioning,
mm,
fixed position, sticky position, stuff like
mm,
that.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And,
that's
and
that's
and the
that's
reason why I ask is because like, so I started with the web way back when, like
yeah,
back before Web 2.0 and all of those things, and my first foray into the web was Microsoft Front Page. Because the idea of setting up, opening a text file and writing actual HTML was like insane. Like no one did that, and then from
yeah,
there we got Dreamweaver and all of that. And for a very long time, you designed your stuff in Photoshop and you sliced it up and you just put it in tables and whatever. And I think that
yeah,
the big thing was, like when we had responsive design, it was very hard. Like we saw massive drop off in terms of these GUI tools,
yeah,
because like it's so hard, like responsively, as you mentioned, at some point you need to actually just learn the language itself.
yeah.
But like, so because to me that's always the mental model of how I learned, is by these GUI tools. And then obviously as I wanted to do more advanced stuff, I got down into the code and so forth. So Yeah, I see. There's a specific question here from Lee
Yeah, sure.
around is hosting a Webflow website restricted to the platform? So I already know the answer to that, but I'm happy for you to kind of give a response to that. Maybe I can add to that.
Yeah. So the answer is it's yes and no. Yes, in that Webflow only gives you two options basically. Either you host your website on Webflow, or you export your project as code and then host it wherever you want. But then with the second option, you're not going to have the ability to further manipulate and update your project using Webflow, because essentially you've separated the code from the actual platform. So yeah, I guess that's my answer to the question. You've only got two options: either host on Webflow, or you find a place where you can host, but then you have to export the project as code.
Yeah, and so the like, also to add to that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you
Yeah.
want to export, like, you need a specific plan as well. There's a specific plan.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah.
You
So
can't do
there's
that
also
on the
that.
computer.
Yes, but you can like, I think, download it as a zip file. And honestly, like, the only thing that's really garbled is the JavaScript stuff. Just because it uses its own kind of JavaScript library under the hood. But the HTML and CSS, like, pretty much, like, you have full control over that architecture, like what classes you use, what
Yeah.
HTML elements. So
Yeah.
like, by no means, like, if you export it, you're kind of locked out and you need to use Webflow. Like, it's effectively, to a certain degree, you're just doing what you would do if you're writing plain HTML and CSS, but you're just using
That's
a
right.
tool to create those classes and so forth. Yeah, I'll maybe quickly share my screen as well, like, just to show you guys. So
Awesome.
just for the sake of interest, so back when I worked at OpenUp, so this obviously the OpenUp site itself is completely built in Webflow. Oh, my scrolling is doing a number here. But so, like, this is obviously built completely in Webflow and so forth. But what's very interesting, so I didn't build this. This was a guy called Matt Stark. I think he's still at OpenUp, phenomenal designer. But so what's very interesting, so a lot of the tooling was also built with Webflow. So for example, like this evictions project and so forth. But then you had like more like interactive stuff like WYSIWYmap, and I think they did a lot of experimental stuff with Webflow, where you have something like this, and it isn't. So it's kind of like a map thing, and it isn't specifically built with Webflow directly, but the components were built in Webflow, so the HTML and the CSS, and then the developers took that and they put it into React or whatever. But the design team actually, yeah. So there was a bit of back and forth there. But I think what's really cool about that is you save yourself a lot of time by having the designer actually physically build the HTML and CSS, as opposed to doing it in Figma or whatever, and then having to rebuild all the HTML and whatever. But it does require your designers to be of upskill a bit, but yeah, you can do some crazy stuff. Yeah, they've done, like, I think that was my first exposure to Webflow. But yeah, like I can maybe get them to come and talk about Webflow as well at some point. And
yeah. That's a very interesting. That's a very smart technique, just by the way.
Yeah, but it's not effortless, but yeah, it's interesting what you can do. Cool, but yeah, like, if you want to go to the next slide, and then yeah, let's continue.
Okay, cool. So who just asked the question? I think the
Lee.
person who asked
Yeah.
Oh, Lee. Okay,
Yeah.
just want to get it.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I completely went off course there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all good. It's all good. So I want to chat about, maybe we can chat about Webflow and WordPress, and it's sort of like, what are the main differences? And we actually just touched on one of the main things, in that Webflow is more of a closed system than WordPress is, especially when it comes to hosting a website. We just discussed that. And WordPress is definitely completely different. You've got a lot of customization options there, a lot of scalability options there. So that's probably one of the big difference, the main differences between Webflow and WordPress. However, I do want to note one of the reasons why I enjoy working in Webflow is because when I was working in WordPress, and this is no dig at WordPress, just by the way, it's an amazing ecosystem, if I can put it that way. A lot of things tend to break, right? Because you have those added layers of complexity, because you have all this room for scope. I mean, all this scope for customization and scalability. So it really depends on the type of person you are, where you're working, what you're trying to build. I used to get frustrated a lot, right? Because I had to go back and I had to, fix some line in the htaccess file and check if the plugin is updated and all these other things that I feel personally were kind of getting in the way of what I was trying to do. Please excuse that noise. I think my dustbin just fell. But anyway, so, and I do want to say, neither tool is better than the other. As much as I have personal issues with WordPress, I'll be the first one to say. But there are differences that I think people need to understand, especially if you don't know what Webflow is. Webflow really is more of a website builder. It does have e-commerce functionality. It does have functionality that allows you to build a membership site. Although I do want to say, it really shines more as a website builder. Most of the clients that I work with are really just trying to get, are trying to build beautiful marketing websites for the most part. And that's where Webflow really shines. Right? WordPress is not a website builder, although there are a lot of website builders that are built on top of WordPress, like Divi or Elementor. WordPress is more of an ecosystem, right? So I've seen online, this used to be a debate. I think it's been replaced by Webflow versus Framer now. But yeah, sort of like maybe a year or two ago, people were hashing it out. And I just personally feel that these are not the same. It's not the same thing. A fairer comparison would be comparing Webflow to Divi, to Elementor, to Wix, to Framer, to tools like that. But yeah, I just wanted to stress out here that the main difference between Webflow and WordPress is Webflow really is more of a closed system. Yes, you can export your project as code and do some amazing things and host it elsewhere. There is that option, but then those are your own options. Either host on Webflow or host somewhere else. Yeah, I don't know if there's any questions on this.
No, I have a ton. Yeah, that's great. So no, I 100% agree with you, like in terms of WordPress. So, like credit where credit is due. I probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for WordPress. I don't know if you can say the same, but like WordPress was kind of my journey into like the websites and stuff as a career. Like up until then, I've mostly done it on the side. And I think when I started learning WordPress, that's when I was like, I'm literally going to build a career out of doing stuff on the web. And I don't do that type of stuff much anymore. As mentioned, I do a lot more like kind of building actual software in the web. Yeah, like I do think, and I think this is something that needs to be said, is whether it's, and I'll stand by this, and it might make some people angry, but I do think like a large majority of stuff that's on WordPress, WordPress is not a good fit for it. Like there's no reason, if you have something that's effectively a digital brochure. And I'm not advocating for Webflow here either. Webflow might not even be a good fit either. Maybe something like Wix, or once again, Wix, Squarespace, or whatever. If you're a plumber and you just want like a little website or whatever, like maybe just pop it up on Wix. There's no reason to familiarize yourself with Apache. There's no reason to kind of learn PHP. There's no reason to even have a live server for something that's effectively just a PDF in a browser. Like there's no reason you need a database, and every time someone goes to your site, it hits a live database and pulls stuff down. So like I do feel like even like if you're building those type of things in WordPress, like obviously, no shame or what anything, but there is a lot of value in terms of there's a lot of theming and there's like a really established like ecosystem of themes and stuff. So it has that going for it. But I would maybe advise you to look at some other things, because once again, like even if you don't want to pay for like Webflow hosting or whatever, like you can probably put a Webflow site on something like Netlify. Just use Netlify drop or whatever, and just pop it up there or whatever, and it has no hosting fee because it's just files. The other
Yes.
thing is as well is, like, if you use something like Webflow or whatever, there's physically no way your site can get hacked, because it's
Yes.
static files. There's no
Yes.
data. Well, I guess it depends on, like, if you count the CMS as a database, but also the CMS is read only from
Yes.
the user side. So there's physically no ways. The only way someone can hack your site is if they can physically get into your Webflow account,
Yes.
which, if you're using two-factor authentication or whatever, is basically impossible.
Yes.
So even just for that, like the amount of WordPress sites that get hacked, that has no business actually having a
Ooh.
live server at the back. So
Ooh.
yeah, like I can talk about this for hours. Like, I would
Yeah,
really
no.
encourage anyone who's kind of building these type of things in WordPress to look at some other options, because you might be surprised in terms of like cost and just like things like not getting hacked and all of that. But yeah, no, 100% agree. And I think we can also chat a bit later, maybe about the kind of like the theming ecosystem and whatever, because that's something I'm not
Yeah,
familiar
yes.
with. So I've done a bit of Webflow and so forth in terms of teaching students and so forth HTML and CSS, but I've never
Yeah.
played around with kind of like buying a theme and like how that compares to just a WordPress theme and so forth. But that's something we can chat about a bit later as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say I totally agree with everything you've just said. I think it's really important to just understand, what are you trying to build? There's no point in bringing an RPG to like a sword fight. If you're trying to build, like you said, a landing page or a brochure website, sometimes WordPress can be overkill, and sometimes Webflow might also be overkill sometimes. So I totally agree. I totally agree with what you just said. I want to talk about how to learn Webflow, and maybe just talk about some strategies around that. Again, this is all based on my experience and how I got into Webflow. If this is something that you're interested in, Webflow has an amazing online resource, an online education platform called the Webflow University. It's completely free. They've got amazing video courses. The production value is out of this world.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, the production value on those things are
Yeah.
amazing. Like, I've yet to actually see like a Udemy course or something that's at the level those things are, and they're completely free. Yeah,
Completely free. Very funny as well. I mean, I feel like it's they do skits where they have to write out scripts and stuff, because there's a lot of comedic jabs and stuff like that. But it's really great. It's a great place to start. Another cool thing about the Webflow University is that you can also learn about HTML and CSS as well. So it's not like you'll only be learning about Webflow. It's a great resource. It's a great tool, and definitely one worth checking out. And all you need to do is just go on Google and just type in Webflow University, and the first link that pops up should take you to the university, and you can start learning. So there's a question or something that Skalk said earlier that kind of made me rethink what I was going to say now. Because normally what I advise people is to start off by learning HTML and CSS separately, and not to say that you need to be a wizard or anything, but it's just really important to understand the box model, to understand what CSS is, and how it sort of like works with HTML. It's very important to have those fundamentals sort of like locked in your mind. It really makes it easier for you to work with Webflow. So I guess I'm just speaking from my own experience. When I got into Webflow, I already understood HTML and CSS, so I didn't have to start from that base. I just jumped into Webflow, and it was just a matter of learning where all the different properties are and how the Webflow UI works. And that's how I got in. So another suggestion I normally make is you could learn HTML and CSS just separately on a platform like Codecademy, or Free Code Camp is another one. Spend a week or two, maybe a month, just fiddling around, but mostly just trying to grasp the fundamentals. You're not trying to be a wizard. So maybe just a quick question to you, Scott, because you mentioned something very, very interesting about using Webflow as a tool to get introduce yourself into sort of like web development. That's something that I never thought about. But anyway, I don't know if you have any questions or any talking points on this.
Yeah, like no, 100%. And like it's honestly, I I've yet to, and this is as someone who's been in the teaching space for a very long time, I've
Yeah.
yet to see anyone really not make it because they took the wrong approach. They're like, oh, they learned the wrong technology first, or oh, it's like, oh, they could have had an amazing career, but they went and like, because you get this conversation a lot with kind of, should you learn JavaScript fundamentals first, or should you start with something like React? And honestly, I think like it's very rarely that's ever really been something that's been important to me, because I do think like what I see 99% of the time where people they kind of start on a journey and they don't make it is because of motivation. It's like they're like, oh, I'm like, this is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. This is a pain. It's frustrating or whatever. And honestly, so my advice would be very unsatisfactory insofar that I would say, do the one that gels with you. Like if you start, just dive into Webflow and you kind of like just pull buttons and press things and see what happens and kind of learn by experimentation, go for that. But maybe try actually learning a bit of HTML and CSS, like literally typing it out, and see, like, maybe that really resonates with you and you kind of like feel like a hacker man or whatever. You're like, oh, this is so cool. So honestly, but I would maybe encourage doing a bit of both and then just getting a feel for which journey you kind of enjoy, and like kind of maybe focusing on that one. But yeah, like I would, my answer would be do both and see what kind of is more compelling to you. I don't necessarily have any additional questions myself. So there's a question here from Brian, who effectively says, so basically Webflow is good for static sites. Yes, and I would agree. But I think like there's a caveat here, and that's almost like an entire can of worms itself. Like, how do we define a static site? Because when you're getting into the realm of things like Jamstack or whatever, like you have like actual stuff like for example Smashing Magazine. Some of you might be familiar with Smashing Magazine. Smashing Magazine is 100% a static website. It's built with something called it's built with Go. I think it uses Hugo under the hood, and it has like e-commerce, all of that stuff like sprinkled on top by means of little bits of JavaScript here and there. But at the end of the day, all of that gets compiled beforehand and just HTML and CSS and saved on a server. So good for static sites, yes, but also like we need to also be mindful to kind of figure out what we mean when we say static sites. But I would say for sites that are once again effectively like a digital brochure, as mentioned, like that, I would say it's phenomenal. Not really like even good. But yeah, I don't know. Like at the end of the day, I also want to be cautious that we're not necessarily like it comes across like we're slamming WordPress. I do think like technically something like Webflow is a better solution for a lot of stuff that WordPress is built in, but technical constraints aren't the only thing that kind of determine what tool you use. I think what WordPress has going for it is it's really mature. As mentioned, like if you go on something like Theme Forest, you will find thousands and thousands and thousands of themes. It's been around for so long, whereas something like Webflow doesn't have that level of maturity. So it's all trade-offs. But I do think there's technical reasons why you might prefer something like Webflow. So if you're just using something like WordPress, like maybe look at some of these tooling and so forth. And cool. So then there is another question around what are your favorite Webflow plugins, integrations, or workflow automation hacks? Oh, by Greg. This is a good one, Bulls, and like I actually can't speak to this because I basically don't go past the fundamentals in terms of teaching it or so forth. My guess is you probably have a lot more experience in terms of day in, day out, how all the pieces play together. So I don't know, maybe this is a future slide that we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves a bit. But do you have specific stuff that you want to talk about?
So my thanks, Greg. My favorite Webflow plugin or integration. I don't know if you're familiar with Webflow. FinSuite attributes. I don't know if Greg is familiar with Webflow. I can't live without FinSuite attributes. So how do I explain what FinSuite attributes are? So
if you want to share your screen, just browse to it. I can pop that.
Oh,
up.
I don't have the slide for it, unfortunately.
No. Just Chrome or something if you want. I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it might be easier to explain it in that way.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, maybe let's do that. Let's quickly let me. Oh, we are sharing my screen. Let me type in FinSuite attributes here quickly. All right, let me go to all solutions, right? You can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
All right. So FinSuite attributes essentially is a set of tools that you can bring into your Webflow project that extends the functionality of Webflow, because Webflow does have certain limitations. And one of them, let me go to one that I tend to use a lot, is creating complex filters for dynamic content on Webflow I think I don't think it's possible to do it. Okay, it is possible to do it, but it's not exactly the best way to do it. And by complex filtering, I mean if you want to have different categories that you want to group your dynamic content with, right? Webflow doesn't do that well, sort of like out the box. So a tool like attributes, and all you need to do is just bring in the script. You copy the script into the header section of your project, and then you follow the steps here going down. It's a free tool. And using a tool like that, you're able to add filtering functionality that just doesn't come out, that's not native to Webflow. So this is one of my favorite tools. I use it on a daily basis, and it's awesome because it's free of charge. FinSuite is a Webflow agency, so they understand the landscape, and that's one of the reasons why they created this tool. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, like we can get back to that, but I think like even that recommendation is amazing. I didn't even know about that. But yeah, cool. But yeah, let's continue with the slides. And
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna try and speed through this.
Don't worry. This is how it goes. Yeah, like it's always a good thing when you have too much to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good problem to have.
100%. So I want to talk about how to get Webflow jobs or gigs, and everything I'm going to share now. You could probably use if you're looking for a job in product design, if you're looking for a job in front-end development, back-end, full stack. These principles apply. And again, this is based on my experience. I want to start by talking about something very important, which is what I call the visible versus the hidden job market. And the reason why I'm passionate about this particular topic, when it comes to how to actually get a job or how to get a gig in tech or in Webflow, because a lot of people tend to struggle with that. So I want to share this concept, right? We have what we call the visible job market, which is largely comprised of job listing websites, Indeed, PNet, stuff like that. And then we have the invisible job market, which is largely comprised of tight-knit networks, essentially people who know people who know people who know people, right? And the only way to gain access into the invisible job market is you need to know people who know people who know people who know people. Now, the fun thing is that it's never been easier to know people who know people who know people in this day and age, thanks to tools or platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, I do want to say that my previous jobs, my two previous Webflow agency jobs, I never applied for them. There was no ad that was put out, right? It all came about. It essentially these opportunities came from the invisible job market, right? I knew people who knew people who knew people. But now the question is, how do you infiltrate the invisible job market? How do you gain access into these networks? How do you get to know people? How do you use a tool like LinkedIn and Twitter, or X as it's called now, to gain access to some of these opportunities? So I want to talk about networking. The first thing that you need to understand and know how to do, it's a skill, to be honest with you. It's a skill. And maybe just a quick one. I really want to talk about this. I think a lot of software developers, the graduates, the younger guys who are coming into tech, they learn about software development. They learn about, or maybe even the designers, they learn about product design. They learn all this stuff, but then they never learn how to get a job, how to network, how to position yourself, how to build a personal brand online. These skills are also necessary. You also need to work on these skills in tandem as you're building yourself up as a professional in whatever space you're trying to play in tech. But obviously, I'm talking about Webflow here. So I want to make that very clear. People tend to forget. I don't know if it's a problem, and maybe you can speak on this, Skulk. If it's a problem of our education institutions, I don't know if they're teaching graduates how to find jobs, how to network, how to build a personal brand. But let me just quickly go through this, and then maybe we can have a chat about it. So, all right, first rule of networking online, especially networking online: never ever ask for jobs or gigs up front. I can't stress this. I don't know, Skulk, if you've ever experienced this. People DMing you on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Hey, Skulk, I saw your talk on FEDSA. I'm a graduate, or I'm transitioning from wherever, from finance. I'm trying to look for a job in front end or whatever. Do you know of any opportunities? That doesn't work, right? That doesn't work. That's a great way to kill relationships, right? And a lot of people do this, especially the younger guys, especially the graduates. They they DM people as soon as they graduate from a boot camp or from what's this computer science degree at Stellenbosch or UCT or whatever. And I understand there's that desperation, you're trying to get your first job, but it's really important to understand that when networking and meeting people, especially online, don't ask for jobs or gigs upfront. That's just a golden rule. It's tacky and it kills relationships, because unfortunately people only do business with people that they know, like, or trust. And I'm going to chat about that in a bit. So how do you network? First tip in networking: attend a lot of online events. I believe FEDSA runs a lot of online events. I think ZAPD as well. Attend them, whether it's online or offline. For the offline ones, if you can attend, if you're in the region or area or city, if you can, go for it. Introduce yourself, ask questions, meet people. But then the most important thing with attending events, whether online or offline, is you have to follow up with the participants or with the speakers. You have to follow up. So what I did and what I've done in the past is, in fact, this is how I got my first Webflow job. I attended a Webflow meetup, a South African Webflow meetup a couple of years back. And I was part of the meetup. I think I asked a few questions. And then after the meetup, I followed up with the organizer, who happened to be the owner of the first Webflow agency that I worked for. I followed up with him. And when I followed up, I didn't ask for an opportunity or a job. I was like, hey, that was a great meetup, great event. I'm interested in Webflow, and I'm hoping to learn more. Thank you for setting up the meetup. Great to meet you. I think I said something, along those lines. And then what I did was I nurtured that relationship. Every week or every 2 weeks, I'd say, hey, I'm still, learning about Webflow. Look at what I built. And then those conversations over time. Now, this didn't happen overnight, right? It took a couple of months. I can't remember how long it took, but it took a while. But eventually, it led to a point where the organizer, who's the founder of that agency, was like, hey, man, let's get on a call. I see you're really interested. I've been seeing your work. Let's get on a call. We got on a call, and then he said, look, I'm actually looking for someone to help us with Webflow work. I've got a lot of projects coming in. Would you be interested? And that's how that started, right? And that all basically came from attending one online event, and then nurturing that relationship for I can't remember how long it was. So that's very important. The other thing that you need to do when networking online is connect with people on LinkedIn and on Twitter, or as it's called now, X, right? Okay, on X you need to follow people. On LinkedIn you need to connect. So on LinkedIn, send out connection requests to Webflow developers like myself. Introduce yourself. Don't ask for jobs. Don't ask for opportunities. Just introduce yourself. Hey, my name is Ryan. My name is Tando. My name is Tato. My name is Katie. I'm interested in Webflow. I saw your talk with Skulk on FEDSA. It was really great, or it wasn't great at all, depending on how you feel. And then let's have a conversation. Be a human being. Don't mention anything about you're trying to look for it. Don't do that. If it's gonna happen, it will happen. Let that process happen at its or take its own time. Don't worry too much about that. The last thing I want to talk about quickly is this whole idea of posting content. You need to post content online, right? Remember, we're talking about how to get a job in Webflow, but this applies to almost any area in tech. You need to post content related to what you are learning, what you are building. All right. What people normally do is they take screenshots of what they've built, which is not bad. All right, but I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend that you only do that, and I'll explain why in a bit. Post content is very important. It helps to build your personal brand. But the important thing is, it helps people who are connected to you, people that you're connecting with. It helps them to know you, like and trust you, which is very important, right? I think we have forgotten that we're still human beings. Just because we're on the internet and just because we are interfacing over the internet, we're still human beings, and human beings enjoy or prefer to work with people that they know, like, and trust, right? So posting content helps you to build sort of like that rapport, helps you to build likability, reliability with the people that you're connecting with online. Now, it does take a lot of time. When I say a lot of time, it does take a while for your content to start to sort of like make an impression on people, but you have to be consistent. And yeah, so one of the things that you can do is instead of just showing us your work, right? Show us how you work, right? Share your process. This is actually a very good tip because I tend to see a lot of people. I'm very active on Twitter, on X, and a lot of people show their work and stuff like that. But it's very difficult to tell if that really is your work. We don't know. I don't know. People share like amazing portfolio pieces, but then I don't know if it's your work, right? So if you share your process, and what I mean by that is use Loom, record a video of yourself talking through what you are building, explain it in a way that makes sense to you. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I think on Loom you can record up to 5 minutes for free. Explain what you're building, and then that's powerful content. And what that does is it's going to show someone, like a prospective employer, a prospective client, that you are competent at what you do. And because it's very difficult to gauge how competent someone is at a specific technology. Just because your portfolio looks amazing, it's difficult. It's still difficult to make that judgment and say, okay, this person is really good, right? But when you share your process, you make it easy for prospective employees and clients to understand how you think, which is very important. And that definitely can help you to unlock opportunities in the invisible job market. I don't know if you have any talking points there. I spoke about a lot of things.
No, geez, if a lot of people so there's a couple of things. I just want to mention a couple of things, and then there's also like a really good comment in the text chat that I also want to kind of bring up. But first and foremost, like anyone who knows me, like when you started talking about those things, like they were probably like, no, because man, I can go on about this forever and ever and ever, and like specifically of students, and they never believe you. They never ever believe you. They think that once they graduate, they're just going to start like sending CVs every day, and I always tell them, like day one, start attending meetups. Like even this, like even if it's online, first prize is always in person. Like even this is good. Like so for example, so we had a question earlier by a couple of people. Like one I remember is Greg, and I have no idea who Greg is. But let's say maybe like at some point or whatever, like I like interview someone or whatever, and he's like, oh yeah, I don't know if you remember, there was that event, and like I asked the question about whatever and whatever. Already there's a connection point. And the reason isn't like, the reality is that, sorry, and also maybe let me preface that a bit as well. So some people might now be like, okay, cool, but I wanted to learn about WordPress. Why are we talking about all these things now? Okay, first and foremost, go to Webflow University. Not WordPress. Did I say WordPress? Sorry, Webflow. Go to Webflow University. They'll explain it to you way better and with a much bigger budget than we can. All right. So there you go.
100%.
Like,
100%.
yeah. So don't settle for us like actually giving you a second-rate version. Just go straight to the source. But like, I think this stuff is really like there's a very important connection here with Webflow, because what's interesting, what I find a lot is like with Webflow, because the projects are so small in scope, it does lend itself very well to freelancers or agencies. The type of work that I do, where you're doing like massive software engineering projects, like that stuff, like that's the next 5 years of your life. Like every day you're going to wake up and you're going to like look at these DB connections, and you're going to kind of see what are the slow connections, and you're going to like have to migrate the data, and whereas these type of things, like you build something, and because it's kind of static in nature, there you go, here's your thing, Mr. Client, and move on. So I think a lot of this is very like relatable to people like looking at Webflow as a technology. But one thing I do want to bring up is, so someone did mention about the cost, I think specifically as South Africans, so when we're looking at the exchange rate. So yeah, like, this is a reality. And one thing though is that I do think you can do 2 sites for free. Maybe correct me. Like, I'm not 100% sure what this is referring to. I assume this is referring to the Webflow subscription fee, correct? I don't know what the $14 is.
I just wanted to say you are right. You can create 2 websites for free, and after that, you need to get onto some kind of a subscription plan.
Yes. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm like. Okay, cool. So it is about the Webflow subscription.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I don't know if you maybe can talk to that.
Yeah.
But so I understand it's about custom domains specifically, or okay. So I think I might be wrong, but you can still purchase a domain on something like AfriHost or wherever and point it to a Webflow site. Can you not?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Yes.
Point your name server. Yeah. You can.
So if this is specific, sorry. So because I just saw he said custom domain. So I'll have a look at the pricing in a second now. But it seems like even if that is for the pro subscription, that is to get a custom domain. So obviously, I think the thing is here, it's very like easy. It's plug and play. You click a button and whatever. But if you want it less expensive, I don't know if you can take a free, like point a domain to a free plan. Or do you need a pro plan?
That's the challenge. You need a pro plan.
I see. Okay.
That's the catch.
That's the catch. Well, so here's the thing. Okay. So what is, I don't know. Like, it's like, so for me, it's not that big of a deal because I purely do retainer work. But once again, it's like the type of work I do is different. But it might be possible to like just have that be included in the contract. So you build the actual thing for a client or whatever, and you just do it on the free version, and the domain is something .webflow whatever, and then you're like, cool, but in order for this to take live, like this is the cost. And and if it was a WordPress site and whatever, like then you compare it against what would that hosting be, but also with the caveat in terms of all the other things that come with WordPress. But yeah, it's tricky.
There is another option, Scott. You could just get your client to sign up for Webflow for one of the pro plans, and then they can add you as a freelancer to their workspace.
Yes.
So that's one
Yeah.
way you can do that. That's another way you can
That,
make
yeah,
it.
that as well. And yeah. So I see he did mention, yeah, like it's a sneaky pricey thing. Like you don't realize this until you actually. But like at the end of the day, like, and I think once again, like we're not here representing Webflow or
Yeah.
trying to sell people on Webflow. I think like
Yeah.
there's like you can also look at other tools similar to Webflow. I think there's a lot of great tools.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Companies are going to company. Like for-profit companies are going to fall. So it's the same thing of signing up for like a Netflix trial or whatever, and and then like you realize, oh, the trial was like $3 a month, and then after that it's like $5 million or whatever. It's yeah. So yeah, okay, that's one thing to be cognizant of, maybe. But yeah, like I think you're going to face that with most tooling at some point. Like there's going to be a way for them. No one's going to allow you to build stuff completely for free with no catch. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wanted to say that is one of my personal gripes with Webflow. Unfortunately, as much as I love the tool,
Yeah.
obviously I'm in a position where I can afford that subscription.
Mm.
But I do know when you're a beginner, you're a student, or you're just starting out, maybe you're trying to freelance, that can be a bit of a challenge. And a lot of people have complained about that in the Webflow community as well. So
Yes.
even as Webflow users, we complain about that.
Yeah.
We are kind of hoping for a more friendlier beginner level tier, or maybe the free plan can have more options. Where crossing fingers, hoping that can happen. But it is an issue. It's just one of those things. I do want to say though that if you can get over that hurdle, all right, just through determination and persistence, getting jobs or working for an agency somehow. Once you get over that hurdle, the opportunity is worth it, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
The opportunity is worth it.
And that is unfortunately the reality of, like, even if you're just like just doing like hand coded HTML and CSS or whatever, at some point you have to probably buy a laptop. At some point, so it's unfortunately the reality. But one thing to say though is, so we've been taking a focus where we're very much thinking about individual freelancers and so forth. And like as with any business, you need to put in some capital, and maybe the business works out, maybe it doesn't. Unfortunately, that comes with the territory. But one thing you can do is just build really, really cool stuff with Webflow. Get really good at Webflow, and there are a ton of agencies out there that employ people. Bullz, I think you're working for one, or are you not? Or you do freelance work?
I'm doing freelance full time, so I was working for one. But I concur. The opportunities are definitely there.
So just get really good at it, and then apply at a company, and like they're obviously not going to mind if it's like some random mumbo jumbo URL. They just say, hey, here's my work. Are you interested in, like, can I apply for a junior Webflow position or whatever? And honestly, you probably need to be at the level where you can be hired by an agency before you even consider doing freelance work for some random person or whatever. So I'd say, like, maybe just start playing around with Webflow. Like, it almost feels like a bit of a premature optimization in a certain degree. Don't solve that problem yet, just get really good at Webflow. And then either you'll get a good client who just like is willing to fork over that money, or based on the demo stuff you've done, or you can just apply for a job. But it's unfortunately, like it comes with the territory. But
I just also wanted to
and these are great questions. Sorry, I just want to also mention, like, he did say, he means these questions sincerely. Like, he's not trying to be difficult.
No.
Like, no, these are amazing questions. Please, if anyone has any questions of this nature, like, this is amazing. Yeah, this is the benefit of having a forum like this. Yeah, go ahead, Bullz.
So I do want to mention, you mentioned that it's probably best that you work for an agency before you start freelancing. I agree with that 100%. Another option though, which is also something that's happening in the Webflow space, is you could also be an apprentice and work with another freelancer who has either too much work on their hands and needs a little bit of assistance. So that tends to happen a lot. Just in fact, like I think 2 weeks ago, I hired someone for a project. I hired a Lottie animation expert. So that's probably more
Mm.
design related.
Yeah.
Just because I needed just one thing done, just a small task. I
Mm.
gave me an hourly charge, paid him in dollars. He's based somewhere in India. I would have gladly
Mm.
paid someone in South Africa if someone.
Yeah.
I mean, I put out the post on Twitter, so I looked at the portfolios and then I picked someone. So that tends to happen a lot, right? You can also be an apprentice to someone who's a freelancer, an established freelancer, and you could do that for a while. And then the
Mm.
cool thing is that if you build consistency and you do a good job, you can actually get to a point where that person refers his clients that he can't take on to
Mm.
you. So
Mm.
that's another thing to think about.
Mm, no, 100%. Yeah, and so we probably need to start thinking about kind of maybe closing things up a bit.
Yeah,
And so from my side, I have a couple of other questions, and I think then I'll maybe leave some space for you to kind of add anything you want.
yeah,
So.
no problem.
Um, have you used any other like no code / low code tools, like for example Bubble or whatever that has a kind of a different purpose? Or I think the other one is like is it reflow, or there's a couple of them.
Shutterflow.
Yeah.
So I've looked at Bubble. It's just I just don't have time.
Mm,
I've looked at Bubble. I haven't played around with it. I've looked at another tool which is similar to Bubble, Flutterflow,
mm,
which is based on the Flutter
yeah.
framework.
App.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I've looked at that, but I haven't played around with that. I do want to say though, there is something in the Webflow space that has been built. There is a third party. I could call it a software. It's called Wized,
Mm,
Wized. If you type in
mm,
Wized in online, you can check that out. So Wized
mm.
is something that attaches to Webflow that allows you to connect to any backend of your choice. So Superbase,
Interesting.
sorry for the noise.
No worries.
You can
Yeah.
connect to Airtable. You can connect to what's another? There's another no-code backend tool called Zeno. You can connect to Zeno. So through that, you can actually now build web applications using
Mm,
Webflow as your front end, using Wiz as the connecting piece between your front end and your back end of your choice. So
mm,
it is
mm,
that's also happening in the Webflow space.
mm.
Um, yeah. So I just wanted to make mention of that.
Yeah. No, I was just curious because I think also one thing to keep in mind is that I think these things get conflated a lot because they're low code / no code, but they're actually very different in terms of what you use
Yeah.
something like Bubble for and what you use something like Webflow for.
Yeah.
But so I was just curious on kind of your experience with those. Um, and then I think last one from my side is so in your experience, and once again, this is maybe kind of the freedom that we have where we're not trying to sell Webflow, whatever. We're just talking about Webflow and just kind of appreciating it as outsiders. Is in terms of like the e-commerce stuff, the CMS stuff, all of that. How much of the actual legit Webflow stuff do you use, and how much in general do you just like build something together of your own creation that serves those purposes? Because there is a bit of flexibility,
Mm, mm,
even if it's something as simple as you know maybe just having like your actual and I see this a ton is where people have like an e-commerce store on something like Gumroad or whatever, and then
mm,
they just have Webflow, that's the landing page,
mm,
and kind of, and then you click on it and it takes you to something like Gumroad for that product where you do the
mm.
checkout and whatever. So I'm curious how much of the official Webflow stuff do you use, and how much like kind of do you build or hack together or use some third party tool for those purposes, because those do get quite pricey.
They definitely do. They definitely do. And
Mm,
yeah, so for me, I mostly the features that I use are definitely the website builder, and I
mm,
use the CMS as well.
mm,
I don't use the e-commerce that much. I haven't to be honest, I haven't gotten any clients that have needed e-commerce, some kind of e-commerce site done. And I think that probably
mm.
speaks to the fact that Webflow that's not its strength. The e-commerce
Yeah,
feature is not its strength as
yeah,
of yet.
yeah.
You can also build membership sites on Webflow natively. They've got a memberships feature. Again, it's
Mm,
not its strength as well.
mm,
People tend to use third-party applications like there's one that's called MemberStack. There's another one called Outsetter. That's
mm,
what people tend to use for that. So yeah, it's on my end. It's mostly the website builder and obviously the content management system side of things.
Yeah, and that's maybe a place where something like WordPress, is
Yeah.
maybe not a bad option. If you have like spun up something like WooCommerce or whatever, that makes a
Yep.
lot more sense. Having the actual real database that tracks how many items are in your cart and whatever,
Yes.
as opposed to, hey, here's Bob the plumber's digital website,
Yeah.
which hasn't been updated for 5 years, but it's still pulling directly from a live database every time
Yeah.
someone hits it. So yeah, like no, and yeah, like, and once again, maybe also something like Gumroad. Maybe you just need like software as a service. You don't even need a custom built thing. But yeah, and I can say this,
Yeah.
like e-commerce, like specifically checkout and payment, sure, man, it can get hairy. Integrations
I can
and all
I,
that stuff.
I can imagine. I do want to add that there are a lot of third party integrations that help you to connect with. I just forget the names now. You'll probably have to do. I'll have
Yeah,
to probably
you
put
can
the link.
send me a list of links and stuff afterwards, and I'll just add it to the
Cool.
description.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. So there
Mm,
are tools that you can connect. I know there's a tool that
mm,
you can connect Webflow with. This tool, it helps you to connect to Shopify.
mm.
So then Webflow does the front end stuff, and then Shopify does all the e-commerce stuff. So
Nice.
that definitely is happening. That definitely is
Mm,
happening.
But it's also still very early days for a lot of these
Mm,
things.
yes,
As mentioned,
100%.
what WordPress is going for. I keep on mixing up Webflow and WordPress. Like what WordPress is going for it is that like it has that maturity. It has like all these tools that have been built out like 10 years ago that are
Yeah.
kind of have grown and so forth. Yeah, like I don't know if there's anything else you maybe want to add on, like on your side, in closing before we get to where can people follow you and all that stuff.
Yeah, but I've just got, I think, probably one last slide. I just want to
Oh
talk about
yes,
the Webflow South Africa community quickly, and then yeah, that's probably the
yes,
last thing I'll talk about.
100%.
So where do I go now? Right. So
Mm,
we have a Webflow South Africa community. It's run by these two individuals. Please follow them on
nice.
LinkedIn. They didn't pay me
Okay.
to do this, so it would have been nice actually if they did. But the one guy is called Brandon Tancard. Lots of experience in the sort of like web space. He's been around for decades. Another guy is Robert Smart. He owns a Webflow agency. So these are the two guys who are running Webflow South Africa. Please reach out to them on LinkedIn. I know Robert Smart is super active on LinkedIn. He's always posting content. These are lovely people, awesome people. If you wanna maybe get involved or just know when the next event is going to be happening, just get in touch with them. I tend
Mm,
to advertise the events in the ZA Tech Slack in the Webflow channel.
mm,
So that's another place you
yes.
can keep up with what's happening in the Webflow space in terms of what's happening in our country and South Africa. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm celebrating
Nice.
1,000 followers. I'm
Nice.
celebrating 1,000 followers. I got 1,000 followers this year. It took me about 12 months. Trying to build a
All
personal
right.
brand there. Really excited.
Cool.
Follow me and you can send me a DM. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. Just type Bullz. You should see me. And yeah, my DMs are open. Always available to chat. And yeah, that's my chat.
Awesome. Like that was phenomenal, really. Like this is such a good place to start this year. Like if
Thank
the rest
you.
of the talks are anything like this, like it's going to be a hell of a year. Um, but yeah, no, thanks so much for that. I also just want to quickly add, so you did mention attend meetups, either online or in person. You did also mention like ZA Tech. So yeah, ZA Tech's also a great place if you don't know about ZA Tech. So I think we're up to. So I'm saying we, like I'm one of the admins on there. So I think we're up to 16,000 people
Ooh,
already, like
wow.
now. So like, and that's kind of like everyone kind of in some tech related, like coding or design or whatever, some like software related like work or skills or so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also a ton of like Discord channels as well, Discord spaces as well. I think there's
Yeah.
an official Webflow one, is there not? If I'm
Yes,
not
there is.
mistaken.
There's a Webflow
Yes.
Discord channel. Yes.
So, but like those as well, those are great places to not only network but ask questions.
Yeah.
Like really get in the habit of like joining those spaces and
Yep.
set yourself a goal and say like, hey, I'm gonna try maybe something humble. Like, let's say at least once a month, I'm going to ask a question. Yeah. And it's not only about getting answers and learning, but it's also about, once again, that visibility. I've gotten so much work from just chatting with people. Like, I've had discussions with people about like the weirdest stuff, and some random thing about JavaScript, and I'm like, yeah, what do you think about this? And then a year later, they're like, oh yeah, we're building something with like WebGL or whatever. I remember we had that discussion, and you kind of seemed like you knew a bit about it, or you may be interested in getting involved or whatever. So yeah, 100%, like those spaces as well. But yeah, cool.
100%.
Right. Thanks so much. And have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for your time, Bullz. And yeah, like hopefully I'd be keen to maybe even do a part 2 of this. But yeah, let's.
I'm definitely down. I'm definitely down.
Yes. Awesome. Cool. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.